Well, that's a great point, because if you look at the solutions we have around rail, it's really about saving lives at the end of the day. It's about reducing accidents. It's about knowing that crossing is going to activate, so then, when the train's coming, you don't get hit by that train. And the rail industry is a pretty safe, they're a safety-focused industry, but it can never be enough, right? So when people ask me about ROI, you talk about, well, if you save a life or a few lives a year, it's a pretty good ROI, because what's the value of a life? It depends.
Hello, my name is Robert Schmid, also known as Mr IoT. I'm Deloitte's Chief IoT Technologist, and my passion is for all things digital. Today on my show Coffee with Mr IoT, I have here with me Eric Simone from ClearBlade. Welcome to the show. You're their CEO and founder.
Yep. Thanks, Robert. Nice to be here.
We met each other a few years ago, didn't we?
Yeah, South by Southwest. A few years ago.
Southwest, right here. How are you doing?
Good.
How's ClearBlade doing?
Still standing. We're still around. So that's a great sign.
You're wearing the t-shirt, "We connect the things." What is ClearBlade? Tell our viewers.
So we're an enterprise IoT platform company. I actually despise the word platform.
I was going to ask you about that, actually.
We really specialize in industrial and enterprise and edge computing. So while we have a platform that can run in any cloud, our platform also runs completely on connected edge devices. So gateways, basically.
What do you hate about platform, by the way? I'm just curious. I mean, I feel like everybody calls himself a platform. This is why I find it so less descriptive nowadays. But what's a platform to you?
It's something you build on top of course. But a platform can be an IoT platform. It can be a platform for building ratings and reviews. It can be a platform for anything. So I'm a bit older than a lot of folks in the industry, maybe not on the industrial IoT side. So I call it middleware in a lot of ways. So it's an old school term, but for us, it means building on top of something that's reliable, that's secure, that can scale to millions of devices, and that can integrate with existing software, things that have been around for decades, not just brand new stuff.
I don't know if I ever asked you this, but why ClearBlade?
Oh, that's a good question. It's funny. I got the URL back in 2003 when I was going to do a wireless business, and I parked it for a while. And when we started this business in 2007, it's a great name because the name means cut through. So cut through the BS. So one of the things that I recognized years ago when I was a kid in my 20s working at IBM was there's so much marketing BS out there. It's really hard for people to make good technology decisions on software. So I like to pride ourselves on being technologists that try to undermarket and over-deliver. Now, what I've learned in this industry, you can't really undermarket. You've got to expose yourself. But our stuff is real. And so we've yet to lose, if I could knock on wood somewhere, a deal head-to-head based on technology to anyone. So we like to say that we're real and it's not fake.
So tell me, we often talk about use cases, and before we started, you specifically mentioned one of the big things for you is rail. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Tell me a little bit about your rail business. I know you call it Smart Rail on your website.
Yep.
What does that mean? What role does ClearBlade play?
Yeah. So rail, if you would have told me years ago that rail would be our vertical, I would have said you're absolutely crazy. We are not rail specialists. My joke is, but we stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. We ended up, so like most IoT companies over the last several years, we're all searching for our market, right? Searching for a specialty. And it turned out a few years ago, we went up to BNSF Rail up in Fort Worth because we naively thought we could sell them a platform for positive train control. Okay. So positive train control is a government mandate that says you must automate the speed and control a train so we avoid collisions and accidents and so forth in the North American railways. We go up there, my CTO and I pitch, and we spent 2 hours pitching to these guys. And afterwards, they just nod their head. We went back, protocol, back and forth, and they opened up these curtains above their command center, said, guys, your stuff looks great. We've already built all this. And so literally, we're driving back, and I talked to my CTO. I said, they said, we'll call you. I said, they're never going to call us again. And then a month later, they call us and said, we want you to come back up. And so what happened was they said, we have a problem. Our problem's around railroad crossings. And we are being forced to phase out 3G communications across our network. And we've got older infrastructure from other vendors, and they're not innovating as fast as we would like. So what you told us, we think we can use your software for edge compute on crossings to make them safer, predictive analytics and maintenance and so forth. And so we did a project with them to really build to their specs what they needed. And now we have a repeatable solution for crossings in rail. And that's opened up opportunities and pilots, and we're at 7 other railways right now.
So tell me a little bit about this. What does this mean? They had 3G, and they ran it right there on the edge at the crossing itself?
No. They ran some form of data gathering and I/O module into GE and Siemens boxes that would send them some bits of data. What they needed was a solution.
And this was about opening or closing the crossing?
Yeah,
or what?
great. Yeah. So is the gate operational? Are the lights operational? Is the battery charged? Really for predictive maintenance again, and for monitoring of those crossings. What they were getting were bits of information, not real-time data. And so when we showed them what we could do, not only could we future-proof their solution by saying, look, we'll work with your preferred hardware vendor, we'll lay down, in this case we're using LoRa network, we'll work with the hardware and the LoRa network, and we will gather all that information in real time and run it at the edge, and also put it on a server behind your firewall. So we're not touching the cloud in any aspect of this solution today. We are connecting with older back office infrastructure, stuff from IBM and CA and others, and communicating in a more modern way at the edge and being able to run without a cloud connection whatsoever. So we've given them more data in real time, better predictive analytics, and then are able to push down updates to all their 25,000 crossings once they get them all rolled out.
So how many do you have rolled out today?
So we've rolled out 30 in production. They have 2,000 more that are under license, and then we are negotiating for the other 23,000.
That's fascinating. This is what I find so interesting about IoT. There is these edge cases that many people haven't thought of as IoT, and this is, I think, a great example of where you used your platform to give them something they hadn't really thought of before.
Yeah, it's, I love the term Internet of Things. People are getting kind of tired of it, I think, these days. But it's enterprise modernization, it's digital transformation, it's the evolution of M to M, right? That's what this is. So it's hard stuff. And so people have to focus on their specialties. We now have a focus on rail and Class 1 rail, but of course, we're working with partners in the rail industry that know what they're doing, that understand how to walk us in the door to the right people, working with the standards bodies. And then you develop a reputation and start working with the larger vendors. That's really what we've seen. So it's been nice to have that anchor for us. Probably a bad metaphor since it's rail. If we were in shipping, that'd be better.
That's funny. It's not an anchor on railroads. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, there is a bunch of IoT platforms out there. Which ones are you looking particularly out for, and how do you differentiate yourself as ClearBlade from them?
That's a great question. So what really got us noticed was edge computing. So we focused on edge many years ago because we started working with some of the local silicon guys here, sensor folks. Silicon Labs, for example, was working with us. And they were attacking, building their own platform from the device side up. And we're mostly enterprise folks. We were coming from the enterprise down. And as we started having this discussion, my CTO gets up on the whiteboard and just circles the gateway and says, this is where we marry each other. And we realized that our software, the way we had built it, we could stick the entire thing down on the edge already. Because we built it, without getting into too much gorpy detail, with a language called Go, and we fused it all together, and it's single binary, so it's really secure, really fast, and really small. So then we spent the next several years focused on the syncing between the two. So we look at other people in the edge community. Foghorn Systems is one. Litmus Automation is another. Locent is another. Pixium. So I've seen a bunch of folks. And one edge is now.
So you're not thinking of a Greengrass or those things really?
No. I actually see Amazon and Microsoft and Google as partners. We do run in all their clouds. I don't see Greengrass as, that's going to be an on-ramp to Amazon. It'll be valuable, but that's an Amazon-only play. The way we look at Edge is it's got to be cloud independent and platform independent to agree. So, in a lot of our situations, ClearBlade's used as an edge controller mechanism, and then we will work with other people's IoT cloud platforms. Really depends on what the customer wants to do.
Let's talk about edge for a second. We use edge processing all the time, and really, I think it is a big competitive advantage you have. This is one of the things that people talk about when they talk about the Googles and the Microsofts and the Amazons of the world, that they play in the cloud, but they don't play as much on the edge. I've had this often where people choose a cloud platform an IoT platform because it can run on the edge rather than only in the cloud. So really being able to run next to the machine is needed in some cases and so forth. What do you think really is different about running on the edge versus running in the cloud, and what sort of why do people choose to run on the edge, and what's the requirement based on?
So when we saw this trend, which really started with mobile, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's very similar to the world I lived in at IBM when we went from mainframe to PC. It's a computing pendulum swing, right? We go from centralized to decentralized or distributed computing. And what did we do after we went to client server? Well, up comes the internet, we go to cloud, right? So we start sucking things back up in a more centralized, more elastic way, smarter way than being just boxed in with the mainframe. But now that these devices are getting smarter and more data is being collected, that processing needs to get to distributed again, because it needs to be closer to where data is being generated or collected to be efficient. But there are also real situations where you have to have real-time response, right? The one example I use is the autonomous vehicle, right? That's got to be, and it's funny because it's the one that people understand the most. But if you've got an industrial unit that's more expensive, if you've got an edge compute module that can filter that data and reduce that cloud spend or reduce that storage, or run autonomously without a connection, if that big heating unit is in a place where there's no connectivity, then it can still run autonomously without streaming that data, and then maybe there's a way to go backhaul that data over time. Satellite communications are another one. We've worked with satellite companies for taking manufacturing, say, Modbus data, converting it into some satellite protocol and sending it up to the satellite. Satellite is very expensive. You don't want to send all that data all the time. So there are lots of situations where you need edge. Some that are real-time response, some that are grooming of data. I like to think of it as tuning your system, so no one really knows, or they rarely know exactly how the system's going to be used or perform. But if I've got edge on one end and I've got a centralized cloud platform on the other, or behind the firewall cloud platform, I can tune the system by turning those dials and optimizing over time. And then I'm not beholden to a cloud vendor to stream all my data and have that huge bill, right? I can now manage it more effectively.
Do you think it's a difficult choice for customers today to decide where to put stuff? I mean, I get it, why we put stuff on the edge. That was a great explanation. It's sort of like, either real time or sort of taking the data and aggregating it. Those are the two main reasons why we do stuff on the edge. When do you recommend people to go to the cloud?
I think
and you have modules in all of them, right?
Yeah.
For you, it's almost like I put a load here and there.
Yeah.
You don't really care.
We don't. And actually there's also edge of the cloud, right? Which kind of clouds.
Edge of the cloud?
Right. So you've got AT&T and saying edge to edge intelligence. Have you seen those commercials?
No.
Well, that means edge data centers. So look,
okay.
there's a company here in Austin I work with, Vapor.io, that puts these modules in cell towers. So they're closer than the big data center. So that blurs the line even further, right? But I think so there's stuff out there, right? Peter Levine is a brilliant guy. The edge will eat the cloud, and from Andreessen Horowitz. And I think he's partially right, but you need all these things. And I think it depends on the use case, and it depends on the situation and where you want to put that processing along the way. So there's no one is better than the other. Depends on what you want to do. On the edge, I don't want to do big data processing at the edge. That's ridiculous. I want to stream that data to a centralized location and run that over time. So I think it's
So when you need a lot of compute,
yeah.
it's got to go in the cloud. When you need the elasticity, you go into the cloud.
Yeah.
Real time, too much data, you do it right there on the edge.
On the edge. And then it's really confined by the parameters of the hardware, right? So that edge could be a small gateway. The edge could be a big honkin' Dell server that you sit on a factory floor. So to me, at the end of the day, it's all about flexibility of where you put your compute and storage. And it's not just data that we're dealing with here. It's you can do visualizations at the edge. You can do complete solutions at the edge. And I think that's what differentiates some of the edge providers and some of the focus. You've got folks that are going to be better in the manufacturing space. You have folks that will be better in transportation. And that's what you're seeing today as people are specializing in their areas over time.
I look at your T-shirt, right, and one of the things that I always find interesting is we say IoT, Internet of Things. I'm always wondering, there was never the Internet of People. Did we ever say IOP? It's sort of like, why did we create the Internet of Things? I hope we're gonna go back to calling it the Internet at some point in time again.
I agree with you. I think I'm a little worn out on the IoT acronym as well, and I think some other people are too. I think they want to hear about solutions and about real use cases, or real, I should say, case studies, and I'm seeing that the industry is emerging. It's starting to get there.
I always say I connect machines and people, because I often find nowadays also what happens is with location-based services, it might not just be a thing, it might actually be a person that walks around that we want to connect with too, right? And it's as much IoT as it is really, except it's a person that carries a thing. So.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, because if you look at the solutions we have around rail, it's really about saving lives at the end of the day. It's about reducing accidents. It's about knowing that crossing is going to activate, so then, when the train's coming, you don't get hit by that train. And the rail industry is a pretty safe, they're a safety-focused industry, but it can never be enough, right? So when people ask me about ROI, you talk about, well, if you save a life or a few lives a year, it's pretty good ROI, because what's the value of a life? It depends. Pretty high, right?
Are you seeing numbers today on rail crossings that they're more reliable? I don't know how they would measure that, but are you seeing that on those 30?
They're starting
to. Different metrics now after you installed ClearBlade?
Yeah, we're seeing improvements there.
In what numbers? How do they measure that?
So they measure it in really liability. So today, I think the rail industry in general holds back roughly 3% of all revenue for liability. And so while they don't want to measure it just based on that, they're very focused on safety and making sure that rail is not only the safest way to transport material and sometimes humans, but also optimizing the usage of these aging railways. At the end of the day, these things have been around for many decades. So you've got to optimize this stuff and make them even safer over time. And I think the rail industry has done a pretty good job of that.
One of the things when we talk about edge that I'm always, and you mentioned foghorn, so I want to talk a little bit about fog. I have this fantasy, and I talked the other day to someone else about this. I have this fantasy that we're going to have so much power, processing power, and networking power and storage around us in devices. They're all going to put a chip in there, and the chip is all going to have storage, and it's going to have compute, and it's going to have networking power on it. And the device itself will only need whatever, half of it, and then there's half left over, and we're gonna have half left over in every light switch, in every outlet, in every sort of, like, you call it gateway, but I think they're just all gonna be these little devices that have power, and we could just Airbnb out processing power. What do you think about this, and where's that gonna go?
I think that makes sense. I think about it in a similar way. Because that needle's always going to move further and smaller and smaller, right? And more processing power. So the definition of edge is going to move. To us, an edge, I say gateway today, But an edge is an IP connected device, right? As long as you're IP connected and you have...
It's a big assumption, by the way, that it's IP connected today, but I'm with you. I think we're all going to get IP connected over time,
I agree
each
with
device.
you.
But anyhow, I hear you.
I agree with what you're saying. And so that was a big debate years ago, is how, and still today, how do we define what the edge is? To the sensor folks, they're the edge. Well, to us, it's you've got to at least be IP connected, but who's to say that that sensor won't be IP connected down the road? Some are. So I think that that's a pretty astute prediction, because I think a few decade or so from now, maybe two, I don't know, things move faster than I expect.
Are you playing in that? Are you being in the fog too?
Yeah, so fog is, fog, mist, I mean, we've got all these words. I get confused. My head spins. I always go to my CTO and said, tell me what this means. He goes, it's about, he calls it a continuum. So it's about edge to edge to edge communication. So it's a number of hops. So you want to architect your software in a way that can handle the future, right? So these things, as they become smaller, faster, smarter, you want to have some sort of a standard on how these things communicate. And so this is why it's still the wild, wild west out there. I used to say we're in the first inning of this baseball game. Maybe we're in the middle of the first, starting the second inning. I don't know where we are today. It's still really early, and standards will start to emerge. You've got EdgeX, right, who we've been a part of. We got the Linux Foundation, LF Edge. We have developed what I think could be a standard, but will map to whatever Microsoft or Linux Foundation come up with over time. But as this stuff standardizes out, I think you'll see that sort of a vision. We'll start using all these components and maybe start to leverage all that compute around us in a fog-like way. I think that'll happen. Hopefully we'll be around to do some of it, or in some way, shape, or form.
I hope so too. I want to close with almost an esoteric question, right? One of the things I find the most difficult in our space is there is so many different people you got to bring together to make a full solution. And it's not really gotten any easier the last 3 years. There's still lots of platforms, and I always say it's a team sport or maybe a family business, whichever way you want to look at it. But there's so many out there, and almost like you're part of this. I hope you're a good part of it, and I know you are. But the point is, are we gonna see consolidation? Where do you see this go? Give me some of your views as the CEO and founder of one of the platforms out there.
Yeah. Well, one, that's why.
What do you do about that, by the way, you as ClearBlade?
One, we're seeing it already, right? I just got back from IoT World last week, and the number of booths are fewer. The ones that are there are bigger. So that's why I kind of
Are you going to go to Barcelona?
I'm planning, not Barcelona, I'm going to Monaco, though, for something else, EdgeCon.
Okay. Yeah, you win.
Yeah, I know. So that's a part of the reason why I'm going, by the way. When they said, you want to speak in Monaco? I'm like, let me check my calendar. Yeah, I'm in.
Okay, sorry.
But no, IoT World has changed, and it's this year was, every year gets a little better. It's been vendors selling to vendors for the first few years. Now there's more real customers, real use cases, real money being spent. Like you said at the beginning, it's evolved. And just to survive in this ecosystem, you have to have more than just great technology. That was one of the things. We were early, I'll be honest. I have always believed in our tech and our team. That has shown over time, but you have to do more than that. You have to have capital, right? Thank you, Capital Factory, for putting money into ClearBlade. Thank you, Josh. You have to have the correct vision, and you have to have marketing so people know who you are, and then you have to partner with those around you. It's not a competition. It should be more of a partnership. So Microsoft's my friend, Google's my friend, Amazon is my friend. Other edge compute vendors are my friends. I'll talk to them, and sometimes they say, well, you're just trying to figure out our stuff and compete with us. I'm like, no, if you've got good stuff and we've got good stuff, we're all going to do well if you've got the right stuff. So why don't we help each other instead of compete? I really do feel for the technologists at big companies that need to make these decisions, because I think it takes a very brave CTO or digital transformation executive to make a ClearBlade decision over a Microsoft or over an Amazon. And a lot of our argument isn't over anyone, it's and. It's like what I was taught in improv. You say yes and, right? So I need Amazon for this, and I need ClearBlade for this, and I need Dell for this, and you go on and on. So I think you're dead on. It's not about competition. It's about everyone evolving and finding their specialties and then working together. Now that's my overly optimistic view of the world. There's still competition, but
I love your good partners, right?
you have
And for
to-
me, there is good technology, good, and then there is
Yeah.
just being good in some of the other ways, right? So
Well, and the SIs are starting to get into this now too, where the Deloittes of the world and the Accentures of the world and the rest, they're getting in. They're now seeing the money, and we need people that are experts in industry, experts with their customers, because we're not going to go in and penetrate that market without that support. And the SIs still need to bring all these pieces together.
well, we're doing a lot of proof of value now, and the thing that we've seen is that the value is there. The industrial IoT is here now. It's not hype anymore, and it's great to see that you have the same experience. And with that, I want to say thanks for being
Yep.
here.
Thanks, Robert. Good
to see you again. And with that, our coffee chat is coming to a close. Thank you for watching. If you liked the show, please click up in the right corner on the subscribe button. Rewatch today's show or any past shows you've missed on our YouTube channel. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye and